Hey, what's up, everybody? So, you know what it is? It's Friday night, and I got my coffee, got my co host, and I got the Obi-Wan Sizzle Reel. That's right. We thought it was going to be a trailer, it ended up being a sizzle reel, but that's okay. We're going to react to it live, providing everything works, right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, we got Obi-Wan Sizzle Reel. You know what was funny about the whole Disney Plus Day thing? I actually thought that a lot more stuff was going to drop or happen. They actually had a lot of stuff that, they released some things, but it wasn't, I don't think, what everybody expected today.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like, excuse me. Yeah, it's not it's not at all what I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be like a big rollout type situation. It was still cool. Disney Plus Day essentially was about celebrating the release of Disney Plus 2 years ago. Excuse me. And so they kind of want to kind of celebrate. And of course, they were dropping some movies that were in theaters, like, was it Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi?
Mm-hmm.
And
That was a
then
really good movie, too.
Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, and they actually put them on Disney Plus, I saw. Because for a while, they actually weren't, obviously they were theatrical releases. Like Shang-Chi was only in theaters. It wasn't one of those simultaneous streaming releases. And I saw now that it's actually on Disney Plus. Jungle Cruise, I think, is on Disney Plus as well. I think that was one of the things they did. And then, of course, on the Star Wars end of it, we did get that Boba Fett thing that they said that...
Yes, Under the Helmet.
Yeah, that Under the Helmet thing. Now, that's not the same thing that they were talking about releasing in December, is it? Was that full... I didn't actually look at the runtime of that. Was that like an hour and a half or something?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the same thing that they're trying to release in December.
Yeah, because the thing that they're supposed to release in December is this whole, like, hour and a half, pretty much feature-length thing about Boba Fett. Like, it's supposed to be this whole, pretty much like his whole backstory and all this stuff. I'm really curious. So I would have to look at the runtime of this thing and see if maybe that's, that's the whole thing. But, I don't know. It's one of those things where it was a little bit ambiguous, but we thought that we were going to get more, I think, on the Star Wars side of things, especially after that whole Investors Day. It just, from everything that we had heard, it felt like we were supposed to get more stuff, and we didn't get it. And I was reading that a lot of Star Wars fans actually were a little bit disappointed by that. But I don't know. Did it exceed, or were you disappointed, or did you think this is about what we were going to get, or what?
Yeah, I was definitely disappointed. I thought it was going to be more, especially kind of the way they kind of were hyping up Disney Plus Day. It kind of made you kind of feel like it was going to be more of a rollout, and it was just kind of like, oh well, we just popped up a couple of programs, and and that was it. And I even heard we were supposed to get like some more Bad Batch stuff or some looks into the Bad Batch,
but into season 2, exactly.
Right. So
instead, we got what'd they do? They had like a She-Hulk thing or something. They had some stuff on the Marvel side, but
yeah. But as far as the Star Wars stuff, I was kind of I was definitely disappointed on that. I was really looking forward to at least getting a little more Obi-Wan, even to look at Andor or something like that. Stuff that's already kind of been shot. That's the thing. Obi-Wan wrapped up filming in September.
Yep.
So I'm not expecting, like I say, I was expecting at least a sizzle reel like they gave us for Andor. That's what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, if
you're going to do a sizzle reel, at least.
Right, because what we actually thought, as we talked about last Friday, was that we were going to get a full-blown trailer. We thought it was actually going to be... In fact, I remember we were actually going back and forth, like, okay, is it going to be like a full-length, 2.5-minute trailer, or is it going to be a teaser trailer? I never really thought that we were going to get a sizzle reel. And, again, we'll react to this thing in a few minutes, but it's pretty much, I think, what you would expect to see at a celebration if a show was, maybe 2 years kind of
Mm-hmm.
like in production, right? Like it's not going to come
Behind,
out for
right.
another 2 years. Certainly not something I would expect to see that's actually wrap filming and everything else. Because like you said, we could have at least gotten a sizzle reel that was along the lines of Andor. I mean, the Andor one was actually fairly
Mm-hmm.
comprehensive.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think that, so I mean, given that, what do you honestly think that the whole, what do you think the goal of this whole teaser was from your perspective?
I think it'll just kind of let the no fans know, like, okay, what's coming. Just kind of giving them, just kind of even tease even the more. You know, I think that it was kind of like, because here's my thing: it's like when you have concept art, and that's primarily what they use was concept art. I mean, they had some, interview footage that they did with Ewan McGregor and Deborah Chow and stuff like that. But when you're talking about concept art, when you have already have things shot, that's kind of where I'm like, okay, give us the footage. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying
Yeah.
like you got to show us Vader. You don't have to show us, all this stuff. But I mean, like, just show us that, like, okay, this is what it's going to look like. Or this is, I mean, we already kind of know the story and pretty much in the end of itself because it's limited. So we already know Obi-Wan's there. He's watching over Luke. I guess he's going to, probably get involved in some missions or whatever that's going to that's going to arouse the attention of Vader to where they're going to have another duel again. So that's pretty much, and we know we might get some Inquisitors, popping in and out, but we kind of know that that's the general premise of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole thing of, okay, we're going to give you a bunch of concept art. See, concept art is fine when you're developing a show, but the show has already been shot. Like the script is written, it's done. I mean, now that at this point they're at the editing part, probably, adding all the special effects and the color grading and all that stuff. And honestly, I would have been more happy, like I said, with more of a behind the scenes footage. Like if you'd have showed us, like, okay, Hayden Christensen just talking about like being back on the set, and you'd have showed him, just doing lightsaber stick work or stuff like that, or just have showing some of some of the creatures or what the Inquisitors kind of look like. Just give us some of that stuff, like the costumes and all that. Like I said, with Andor did a good job of kind of showing us some stuff that we've seen before with Rogue
Yep.
One, and then kind of like showing us like, okay, well, here's what's to come. I'm okay with that, but this is not exactly what I expected.
No,
It
and I
was
mean, I
still
would,
cool to see
yeah.
something, but
And again, we're gonna
something's
react
better
to
than
it.
nothing.
We're gonna react to it in a few seconds because I only briefly kind of watched. I mean, it'll still be sort of like a first reaction because I couldn't really fully pay attention to it. But yeah,
Mhm.
I just from a first impression, I guess I thought the same thing that you did. You're showing us concept art, but you actually have footage. Like you
Yeah,
shot this
right.
thing. Now, granted, some of this stuff might be going through the whole effects process, and I get that,
Mhm.
but there's some stuff. Ronaldo and Dwight have joined us, and Dwight says, "Good question. I definitely thought they would provide something. I ended up clicking on a wrong link in transit and thought that would have been a good teaser. Of course, it was fake though, and that's the thing is that a lot of times it's the fake trailers that are better. I actually saw one that was done not too long ago, and it was using existing footage, obviously, from episode 3 and 4, but
Mhm.
it was a fairly well done trailer, and it gave us a sense of, I thought it actually gave us a better sense of what we can expect. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not completely down on this little sizzle reel at all. If I were, I probably wouldn't even try to have us do a live reaction. I'd just be like, whatever, let's just talk about the thing. But, I mean, with that, let's
Yeah, let's check it out.
let's check this thing out.
For this character to come back. The fans have been waiting long enough,
Yeah, we have.
Something that's extremely exciting is the return of obviously Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Let's see how the copyright stuff
This is
holds
quite
up.
a dark time that we're coming into with
That's
him.
cool.
Just being a Jedi, it's not safe. There's Jedi hunters out there.
At least he has this one task.
I mean,
which is to keep
Yeah,
Luke
I mean, I'm
safe.
kind of liking that whole
That's definitely
vibe
a
of
starting place for our story. The
they're
interesting
doing
thing
the
is
whole
gonna
Luke
be where it
Skywalker
goes
thing.
from
You know,
there.
they're getting that. The concept art is actually really cool, I think. Of course, we got to have the Vader breathing.
The most beautiful thing of
Hey.
all is that it's brought me back together with Hayden.
We are bringing back Hayden Christensen to reprise the role of Darth Vader. We couldn't tell the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi without addressing Anakin or
This is
Vader.
a sweet shot. I love
That
this.
was a cool shot, yeah, without question. That's actually one of the things that got me the
Have
most
another Swing
excited.
at each other might be quite
That's
satisfying
cool too,
for
which of course we
everybody.
use as a thumbnail.
We hope that you enjoy it as much as we enjoy making it.
I like kind of how they did this. Kind of almost made it look like they were fighting each other, but it was from Empire and
Yeah, and you know, and again, I mean, exactly. It's like they gave us some stuff that I think was pretty cool, right? Like I think that
Mhm.
when we saw Vader's castle, sort of like him on Mustafar, that really excited me. That made me go, okay, I'm really invested in this show, because one of the things that I always thought was missing from the original trilogy, which they alluded to a little bit in some of the other stuff that they were doing, is the fact that we never really got to see Vader more in his element. It was always on a ship. It was almost like when he was working, I guess. The closest that we came was the fact that he was on his Mustafar fortress in Rogue One. That was the only time, and that was really cool. It was kind of like seeing him in his element. And I think that that's a promise that we're getting now for this series, is that, hey, we're going to show you a little bit more of Vader in his element, which also further goes into the fact that, you know, we don't necessarily have to, I mean, we know we're going to get the duel, but we don't necessarily have to see Vader trying to confront Obi-Wan all the time. Vader is very much alive and well during this time period, so you can show what he's doing, then show what Obi-Wan is doing, which would also add more weight to episode 4, even if you didn't have this duel of the century that they're promising us, you know?
Yeah. So this always made me wonder. So okay, what movie was that? That was Empire. Yeah. So Empire, they had that little orb that Vader was kind of sitting in. You know, that was kind of like his little relaxation.
Yeah, like his little
grotto, I
chamber.
guess. Yeah. So I guess he kind of had his own private quarters, like on that, because he had command of his own ship.
Sure, the
So
Executor was definitely his.
yeah,
It's his flagship, home away from home, so to
right,
speak.
exactly. So you know, he kind of had that whole little private quarters where you know he had that little containment thing where he didn't want to be disturbed, pretty much. So I wonder, does he have something like that on Mustafar, or is that
No, I
to
think it's
kind
like
of
his little castle, right? Vader's castle. And that's pretty much what we were seeing in that concept art. I also like the fact that we're seeing what sort of looked like Coruscant's underworld, and you're seeing a little bit more of, again, it's the same thing that I really like about the Bad Batch, where they're doing a lot of world building. You're actually seeing, what does this galaxy look like 10 years after it's been under the Emperor's, the Emperor's rule. And at the same time, you're seeing how Obi-Wan, now that it's not really safe for Jedi to be around, which I think is something that Deborah Chow pointed out, you actually have to figure out how is he going to, you know, I guess, operate in this kind of an atmosphere, because we know that his main objective is to watch over Luke and everything else. And from that standpoint, which a lot of the critics were talking about, well, why do we need an Obi-Wan series? We know this guy's going to watch over Luke until he gets old enough and whatever. But this clearly shows what you can do, because this is not going to just be on Tatooine. You know, he's going to go to other places, probably have other adventures. We don't yet know what he's going to do, but I have to say that even though I'm a little disappointed by the concept art thing, the concept art did do its job. It got me excited about what's to come.
You know, one thing that you pointed out that it just dawned on me, and I think it's kind of cool, is that For the whole prequel and the whole prequel trilogy, um, the Sith were trying to always stay in hiding, because even in Phantom Menace, Darth Maul's like, alas, we'll reveal ourselves to the Jedi, and it's like, okay, like they've been lying in wait, especially Palpatine. He's been lying in wait for a long time. And so then now, it's kind of flipped because now the Jedi kind of have to hide and
Mm-hmm.
the Sith are kind of like just walking around like everybody knows Vader. Everybody knows, I mean, no one knows Palpatine as a Sith Lord. But, it's just the fact that, everybody is kind of the reverse thing now where now the Jedi kind of have to kind of stay quiet. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how Obi-Wan adapts to that because he's just so used to having freedom. If you really think about that, I think that's going to be a good part of the series is that him having to reduce his presence in so many different ways because he can't be General Kenobi. He can't be Obi-Wan. Like he even had to change his name just because, it's just that tight, in the galaxy where he can't have room for error. And I think that's just really going to be a really interesting um concept that they're going to try to bring into this particular series.
Well, and that's it. I think that a lot of what they're going to do, like I said, is a bunch of world building type of stuff where you're going to have Obi-Wan pretty much, like you said, getting used to not just having free run of the galaxy. In a way, it's going to very much mirror the Bad Batch because the Bad Batch were used to being part of the army.
Yep.
It would almost be like if you were part of the military and then some other country took over, and now being part of that military isn't exactly the best thing. But while, you're part of a military of a country, you enjoy a lot of privileges. You enjoy, granted, you're putting your life on the line and all this other stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's like, hey, it's a vacation or whatever, but you do have a certain status within society. And that's what the clones enjoyed. That's what the Jedi enjoyed. They enjoyed the fact that, they had a status in the society that not only do they no longer have, it'd be one thing if the Empire just said, okay, you guys you have no place, you're in exile or something. But they're actually being hunted down and killed. So from that standpoint, you're going from having this super high place in society to not only having a low place, but really no place because you're being hunted. And to see how Obi-Wan, who was actually pretty high ranking in the Jedi Order anyway, he wasn't just like Kanan or something.
Right.
He was a guy that, okay, he
Sat on the
enjoyed
council. He was actually
he
actually on
enjoyed
the council.
Exactly. He enjoyed a status even among the people who had the status. So from that standpoint, I think that there's a lot of story in there. And it'll be interesting because just a lot of the planets and stuff that they were showing in the concept art, I thought, okay, this is cool. And much like the Bad Batch, although this will be live action, so it'll be even cooler, it's cool to see the Empire in kind of a different, this is more their heyday. It's not just them chasing our heroes around a corridor like in the Death Star or something. It's not so claustrophobic. That's what I enjoyed about Rogue One. That scene where Han Solo was part of the Empire and they were in a battle. It was seeing the Empire a little bit differently. Rogue One, same thing. You are seeing the Empire doing stuff that you haven't really seen before because it's not the same thing that we've seen for the last 40 or so years.
Yeah. I also like the fact that the other concept art that really got me excited was that ship that it seemed like an Inquisitor had.
Oh,
It
yeah.
sounded like a weird version of a TIE fighter. It almost kind of looked like Darth Maul's ship that he had in Phantom Menace a little bit, but beefier and just kind of like this big menacing kind of ship. So I really kind of want to see what that's like in action. And I want
Yeah.
to see the Inquisitors too.
Well,
Like I
that's
really want to
it.
see how they make them look. Yeah.
Right, because all we've seen the Inquisitors in is an animation. So now we get to see him live action. It's almost that same Ahsoka thing. We're kind of like, I wonder what it would be like if she were live action, and then we actually get to find out. I mean, there's so many cool things, I think, that this series is going to have in it. Plus, it's going to tie together a lot of things. I think that this is really going to act as a true bridge between episodes 3 and 4. Rogue One sort of does that, but it's really more kind of like it's essentially a prequel to A New Hope. You know, it's one of those things where it doesn't really bridge as much as it just kind of beefs up the information you have on that.
Do you think that we're going to get more? Well, let me put it this way: how many lightsaber duels do you think we're going to see in Kenobi?
How many episodes is this thing? Like 6.
So you think we want to see one episode?
Well, I mean, we know we're going to see the Vader one. I'm sure he's going to fight an Inquisitor. So if you're talking about true lightsaber duels, right? You're not talking about uses of a lightsaber.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to go with maybe 2, 3 at the most. I don't think they're going to overdo it that much, because if Kenobi actually runs into these guys a lot, it's going to more or less tip them off. I mean, it's really going to be interesting even to see how they handle this Vader thing. Like I said, and you and I did a whole show on this once. Well, maybe not a whole show, but I know we did a whole conversation about how they could legitimately do a Vader Obi-Wan rematch without completely destroying the integrity of the duel in A New Hope.
A New Hope.
They could do that.
Yeah.
There are 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways. Who knows? They might even pick a 6th one. You know, we don't really know. But I do trust the fact that where at first I kind of sided with a lot of the fans, where it was like, oh man, you know what? If they had them face off again, it's going to completely ruin the whole thing. In very much the same way that Palpatine coming back almost ruins the end of Return of the Jedi. You know, it's kind of that same thing. But again, you could do it in such a way where it wouldn't.
Do you think that so with 6 episodes, right? Now, from what I'm hearing, they're probably going to be an hour, which would make sense, because anything shorter
with
than
only
that
6,
would be
they
like,
have to. Yeah, they have to be.
Yeah, you almost have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But okay, even so, you have 6 hours. Now, granted, you know, you could turn it basically into a 6-hour movie, but how much, I guess, like world building do you think they could, and to truly tell this story, I guess, and I guess depending on what the story is, really, or truthfully, but like in 6 episodes, an hour apiece, you know, do you think that's still enough time? Or do
Well,
you think
yeah,
it should be
because
like maybe 8
again,
episodes or 10?
right. Well, I think what they're going to do is something very similar to The Bad Batch, because remember, it's not so much the world building is the focus of the series. It's really more the world building is pretty much a result of, or a consequence of, the stories. As you're telling these stories, you're just naturally building out the world. Now, of course, you're controlling that a little bit depending on what story you're telling, right? Because you could tell a very tightly contained story, but it looks like they're not going to do that. And I look at The Bad Batch that way. They're world building, but they're more or less doing it through The Bad Batch's eyes. Even though there have been a couple of episodes, like that one in particular, where The Bad Batch was hardly in it. But it's still centered around them, though. It's anchored by them. Even if they're not the true focal point of the story, it's more or less anchored by them. And so I think that that's what's going to happen here. I think with Obi-Wan, you're going to get a situation where the show's going to be anchored by him. He may not be the absolute focus of every episode, although I would venture to say it would really be more accurate to say with an hour apiece and only 6 episodes, maybe he's not the primary focus in an episode or 2. I think for the most part he's going to be, though, because they got to tell the story more or less through his eyes, his experiences. That's what I think it's going to be. Oh, boy. Okay. We got Dwight and Ronaldo have been chatting away. Yeah, I better get to some of these things. So Ronaldo says, like 20 minutes ago, I love what they showed today. It was really cool, but considering this was leaked yesterday, it wasn't as surprising as it could have been. And, I understand that. But of course he goes on to say, but overall the hype is big. I can't wait for this. So, yeah, again, what they showed today was cool. I think that a lot of people fell on the side of being disappointed, myself included. I thought there was going to be a little bit more. I thought it was going to be hype. Now, one thing I was surprised to see, and I didn't see this until toward the end of the day. I mean, I couldn't have done anything about it anyway, but they actually did stream it live. So, presumably, you can actually go back on YouTube now and just watch the whole thing. Kind of like what they did with Celebration, Star Wars Celebration. And I remember that's one of the things that you and I did was we kind of went back, like after work or whatever, and just started like watching it. I mean, we would have it on maybe during the day, but if there were key things that we needed to focus on, we would just go back and just watch those segments or whatever. So that could be something that can be done. So they did stream it. So it wasn't like they, it just kind of came and went or anything like that. Because, I mean, even Investors Day, right? They didn't stream that. So that's kind of cool. Dwight says, I'm starting to think when Vader is not at work, he is tending to his wounds and scars. See Empire and Rogue One. Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true. I mean, because if you just look, when you look at Vader and you look at the damage and you start to learn more, which is something I was really happy about in all the canon, is that they actually are expanding Vader's experiences a little bit. So you're really getting more of a feel for him as a character, not just more like a great villain or something.
Do you think we're going to see more of Vader in the sense of what he's going through at this point?
Yeah, I do, only because they're making a point to get Hayden Christensen back. And obviously a lot of this concept art is not, suitless Vader. I mean, it's Vader in the suit. So that tells me there's going to be a lot of that. And yeah, I think they're trying to expand a little bit on the Vader thing, because up until now we've always said, well, it's kind of like one of those, in case of emergency, break glass kind of things where they get Vader, they get Palpatine, they get these guys in if they feel a project's going south. But here they really have a legitimate story purpose to put him in. I mean, if you're going to put him in anything, if something's taking place in between 3 and 4, you have to. In fact, what I'm wondering is, are they gonna get that guy that played Tarkin in not Rogue One, but Revenge of the Sith at the end? Because it almost seems like you have to have Tarkin in there too, to a degree anyway.
Yeah, they might do the whole CG thing like they did with Rogue One, though. I mean,
they could. I mean, it's come far enough.
Him. Yeah, and they might mention him, or you might see him from behind, and someone does the voice,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
okay,
yeah, right. So Ronaldo goes on to say, "I think we can confirm the 2 big guys will fight." Yeah. I mean, that was already confirmed anyway, right? Then he says, I'm also happy that we'll see other places, not just Tatooine. That is something that I was really happy about too. That was the thing that I was a little bit concerned about. You could actually do a Tatooine-centric show, and it could work. I mean, it always kills me when people will, they'll pick a planet like that. They'll say, well, you can't do a whole show on Tatooine. I mean, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, we do entire movies on Earth. It's, I mean, there's a lot that goes on in a planet. It's a whole planet. I think people lose sight of that.
Yeah, they think like Tatooine is just a city or something.
Right, right. It's like, no, it's a planet, and a lot goes on daily. I mean, And even if it was just a city, Miami Vice went like 9 seasons or something. You got like, what are all these series? Chicago Hope, Chicago Fire, Chicago. It's like
Yeah.
3 different series that take place in Chicago, just different services or whatever. So you can do that.
Yeah, very valid point.
Well, here's something that's interesting though. Ronaldo says, "I need to check this again." And yeah, you do, because I think the second sister is in the concept art. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that whole ship thing. They said that's maybe an Inquisitor, and it could be the second sister.
Yeah. Well, and I would think, again, you do open that door once you're bringing the Inquisitors in. No different than in some of the original concept art of The Rise of Skywalker. What was that guy's name? Matt Reeves or something? That he was like highly rumored to play a character in it, and then it just sort of quietly went away. Well, it turns out that one of the characters he may have been playing was the son. Like they were actually going to bring in that whole, son, daughter, father trio or whatever.
Okay.
The Force people who are actually living embodiments of the Force. Yeah, so that would have been interesting. Ronaldo says, if you're wondering who she is, she's a main villain in Jedi Fallen Order. It's a really cool character. Yeah, I haven't run into her. It's funny, I started actually playing that not too long ago because I got it. PlayStation had, like some sale, like one of their flash sales or something like that. And Fallen Order, I think, came down to like $20 or something. So I jumped on it. I mean, it is a stunning game. And I know that there's a lot of canon involved in it. Now, I haven't run across a lot of it, but I know a lot of people who have finished the game, and they tell me that even if you're not really into a lot of Star Wars games, which I happen to be, because I also bought Rogue Squadron, and that game's incredible too. But from a canon standpoint, Jedi Fallen Order does contain a lot of stuff. And you can even go on YouTube, I think, and watch all the scenes that are canonical in nature. He says, were you surprised we didn't get a trailer or any other Star Wars project teaser today? I was. And yeah, I think that we covered that before you jumped on, Ronaldo. Yeah, and of course, Dwight said he was surprised as well. Yeah, that was one of the big things that we covered, actually, was the fact that we were really shocked, given a lot of the rumors and stuff like that. And I have to say, a lot of fans were disappointed, but yeah, I have to put the brakes on that a little bit. Because if you really stop and think about it, it wasn't like Disney was overhyping this from a Star Wars perspective. It was the fans that started going psycho and started posting rumors. And I think there was an inside person at Lucasfilm or something that said, "Ooh, an Obi-Wan thing could drop." And it did. I mean, it wasn't a trailer like what we thought. And then, of course, he says, I thought they were going to show some Boba Fett stuff, and or at least casting news of Ahsoka or the Acolyte.
Yeah, I felt the same way too. I mean, I thought they were going to. Well, see, the whole thing is too. Like, I thought it was going to be more of a rollout.
Yeah,
almost like the Investors Day or Celebration or D23 or something like that. And that wasn't the whole deal at all. I mean, it was really just about, all right, yep, Disney Plus, 2 years in. We're going to drop some cool shows. We're going to let you know some things that's going to be coming. And, oh, here's a discount. If you don't have Disney Plus, we'll give it to you for $2 now, and all right, if you're already a Disney Plus subscriber, you can go to Disney World a little cheaper today. It was that type of thing. And I think we all kind of had a misleading thought process on what Disney Plus Day was going to be, because it sounded bigger than what it really was.
Well, and I mean, you could say, you can go one or two different ways with this too, right? You can say, on one hand, well, the fans just went crazy. It wasn't like Disney said anything crazy was going to happen today. But on the other hand, Disney, I think, should have been a little bit more clear about what this was going to be. And I think that would have, brought the fan expectation thing down a little bit.
But I
Because
also think they probably wanted to capitalize on that excitement
oh,
because they figure,
yeah.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a business too.
Yeah,
You
but
know what I mean? So
hey,
it's like,
listen,
well,
that could backfire though, because if people go, well, what was this crap, right? Then it goes the other way. Now you got people tweeting, hashtag Disney sucks or something because they were
well,
disappointed. You don't want to play with fans like that.
well, that's true. But at the same time, it goes back to what you just said, though. Like, we didn't say it was going to be, it'd be one thing if we said it was going to be one thing and we deliver something else.
Yeah.
You all kind of just picked it up in your mind, you know, and that's what you ran with. We just didn't stop you.
Well, but that's it though. Disney should know by now. Because even the Marvel fans were disappointed. I mean, this wasn't just Star Wars fans that were disappointed. The Marvel ones were too. But if you really stop and think about it, because if you actually go to the front page of Disney Plus now, like I said, the Shang-Chi movie is there. I mean, the Black Widow movie's been there for a little while, but that Boba Fett special or whatever dropped. They've got a gang of little trailer type things.
Lego stuff. And
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, it's cool from the standpoint of a Disney Plus celebration, which is what it is. But a lot of times I think we as fans have a tendency to, anytime there's any kind of a public thing where there might be announcements, everybody almost assumes like, oh, well, this must be where they're going to drop this or they're going to announce that. Well,
yeah.
this should probably be a lesson to us all. Just because Disney's hosting some show, it's no different than Apple. Every time Apple, they'll go, oh, well, the new MacBook's going to be introduced here. It wasn't introduced there. But they're doing another public event. Okay, finally in October, which is around when everybody thought it would be, they did finally announce, and then subsequently they've now released the new MacBook Pros. But again, it's that same kind of a thing that anytime any company that has a fan base has any kind of public event, instantly the fans go psycho and think that that's where they're going to roll out, kind of like what you'd said, a gazillion different projects. That's not really the case. And I think
Now,
that
let me
we
ask you
learned
this.
that.
Let me ask you this question, and this goes out to not just you, Eric, but Ronaldo and Dwight as well. Anybody else who's watching, feel free to chat it in, or if you're watching the rebroadcast, still put your thoughts.
And hit the
Do you
like button and
think
the
that-
subscribe button.
and the
Say it.
notification bell.
Yes. We always forget the notification bell. It's a good point.
But do you think that Disney missed an opportunity in the marketing? Because you know how we talked about Solo, how they waited too late to market Solo and it kind of flopped. Now, granted, that was a feature film, so that's a little bit different with this being a series. That's completely different kind of platform. However, do you think that they missed an opportunity to really market the Obi-Wan series? Or do you think it's still better to kind of wait a little bit longer? So maybe, maybe in February we might get
Yeah,
an Obi-Wan
because
trailer.
here's the thing. The earliest I think that Obi-Wan's going to drop is May. That's the earliest. It could drop even later. So I would say that it really depends on when they plan to release it, because it could just be too early. But where I do think they missed the opportunity isn't so much in really big announcements, but really more updates. Because like you brought up earlier in the show, they gave us a gazillion different series. Yeah, we're going to do The Acolyte. We're going to do Rangers of the New Republic. We're going to do Lando. It was endless. It was this whole crazy, wild, utopian announcement that Star Wars fans just ate up like crazy. Like, ooh, look at all the projects we're getting. And the problem is that came and went, and we've heard nothing. We haven't even really heard that much on stuff like you said, of things that have even been in production. We have a show that's essentially in the can, and all we're getting is concept art. Then you have Andor. Andor is pretty much done. And we got nothing on that. So I think the opportunity is, yes, they could have announced some things. They could have maybe updated us. Where are we on some of these shows? And maybe hype them up. I don't necessarily think that they're in a position to do too much with them because we don't really know what state they're in. The Acolyte
Yeah.
is kind of in a pre-production-ish state, but it might not be ready. And of course, the last thing that Lucasfilm probably wants to do is make a bunch of promises and then, oh, just kidding. I mean, they've done that before.
Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Actually, ironically, one of the announcements we get, right, is a delay.
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
have to start thinking, like, okay, and again, I read the whole thing, same thing, and we talked about it on the show, I think last Friday. Or maybe did we? No, we did
No,
the Visions
we didn't
review.
talk about. Yeah, we did the Vision, but we didn't talk about the delay.
One of them we did. We talked about the delay because I remember bringing up the whole thing of, they're talking about, well, she has to do Wonder Woman 3 and all this other stuff. And I'm like, guys, you knew this ahead of time. Come on. But in reading the article, I could see maybe where it might be legitimate and it's not necessarily damage control, but I'm very curious. We'll have to see. And we don't know if another movie is going to slide in its place, right? Because if they're not going to release Rogue Squadron in 2023, what will they release in 2023, if anything? They have a little bit of time because they have all these series.
Yeah, I mean, you still got to worry about, Taika Waititi. We still have his thing kind of looming out there.
Well, I think that's what could actually take the place, honestly.
Yeah.
Let's get to some of these chats. Well, I kind of lost track though. Did I put this one up? I thought they were going to show some Boba Fett stuff or at least, yeah, okay. I thought so. But yeah, again, that's what I was thinking too. So let's see, what else we got? Dwight, this is interesting. Dwight says, yeah, I watched all the cutscenes for Fallen Order. It makes a nice mini story. And that's probably what I'm going to end up doing first. Because that would be the easiest thing to do. Rather than trying to... Because Jedi Fallen Order is not an easy game to play, by the way. It's a challenge. Ronaldo says, I wasn't expecting a big trailer that would break the internet. But let's say Andor is almost ready, as I understand, and Boba Fett will be out soon. Yeah, he's saying, just show a little more. And then he goes on to say, I'm not saying the whole event was bad. It was really good. As a Marvel and Pixar fan, I was really happy. Yeah, I mean, I had heard some of the stuff that it was a little bit more Marvel and Pixar heavy. I mean, definitely as a Star Wars thing, I don't know. And then he says, on the other hand, it was better than DC fandom. little stab at DC. He says, I don't think they missed an opportunity. I just think it was a little disappointing with the Star Wars content. And then he asks a question that I think we could spend a little bit of time on. He says, is Rogue Squadron still happening? I don't think so. And that...
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about a moment ago. There was a delay. There's been a delay with Rogue Squadron because... what's her name?
Patty Jenkins.
Thank you, Patty Jenkins. Yeah, she's working on Cleopatra, and she's also doing Wonder Woman 3, and I think there's another project she has coming up as well. And so, because those are kind of more at the forefront, she's kind of she doesn't have time really right now to work on Rogue Squadron. So, and I think it might have been because of the pandemic that kind of put a lot of people's production schedules behind too.
Yep, because it was supposed to come out in 2022, I think, originally.
Yeah, and because you basically lost a whole year where people, the productions there on most shows stopped, except for like Mission Impossible or something like that. But outside of that, most of those stuff kind of took the back seat, and so when that happens, that kind of shifted everyone's production timeline back.
Well, then Ronaldo says, the only movie I'm 100% sure will happen is Kevin Feige's, because it's Kevin Feige. And maybe.
Uh-oh.
I I would actually bet more on Taika Waititi's movie than Kevin Feige's, because Kevin Feige has expressed interest and he has an idea, and I know he's got some sort of a story or something, but it's not like he actually said, I mean, unless I missed something, which is possible, but I haven't read anything recently, and by recently, I mean within the last 6 months, that said anything where he's like, yeah, I'm working on it, I got pen to paper, that kind of thing. Taika Waititi, on the other hand, does. And then, of course, let's not forget that Rian Johnson has this mystery trilogy that he's been working on that nobody's really talked about. Now, I could actually go with the argument that maybe that movie might not happen, or trilogy might not happen. But again, Rian Johnson, last we checked, which admittedly it's been a little bit, but he said it was still happening. And to be honest, who knows what's going on at Lucasfilm right now? Yeah. I have a feeling there's a lot of inner turmoil, and what they're trying to do is, put on a face, and they can do that. They can do that because they got Favreau and Filoni sort of running the television thing, and that seems to be where Star Wars has put most of its focus, is on television. And even though Star Wars really is a theatrical experience, I mean, it can't not make Star Wars movies, but I have to say, I am really shocked at how much I'm pretty much content with the TV shows. I mean, if they never did another Star Wars film, it would be disappointing, but I can hang with that because we're getting way more content. It's kind of like with this Obi-Wan series. I mean, if each one's an hour long, that's like a 6-hour movie. The original Obi-Wan movie was going to be a 2.5 and done. So there's that. Ronaldo says, hard for me to think that they announced the movie, make that amazing sketch with her in an X-Wing, but they didn't check their schedule. And that's basically what I said last week. That was exactly pretty much, forgot about the X-Wing thing, but that's what I said last week. It's like, okay, now I can understand the whole pandemic thing, maybe moving some stuff or whatever, but it seems like this is coming out of nowhere. And I remember that this is what made me suspicious too, by the way. I remember there was a thing where there was doubt on whether or not they were happy with the direction Rogue Squadron was going in. And now all of a sudden it's been delayed, I mean, it's been delayed, and is it indefinitely? Oh, this is funny.
Better call Ron Howard again.
Right? Dwight said, I heard Luke force choke Ryan so that he cannot make another Star Wars movie. Then Ronaldo says, did you hear the rumors that Chloe Zhao might direct the Kevin Feige movie? Nope.
No, I didn't hear that one.
Didn't hear that one. But you know what? At this point, like I said, nothing surprises me. Dwight says, the Disney TV shows have been better than the Disney movies. Totally agree.
Facts.
I mean, I don't think that there's anybody that would deny that. And in fact, if you look at it, that's why everybody has all this wonderful goodwill and everything like that towards the TV series. And everybody still is down on the movies. And that's why I think you're going to ultimately see somewhat of a soft reboot on the films. And I think it's going to be done through all the TV series. Ronaldo now weighs on the Rian Johnson thing. He says, Ryan stuff sadly won't happen. If it happens, I will scream, jump, and cry of happiness. And yes, that's because for any viewers who haven't been following us for any length of time, Ronaldo was a really big fan of The Last Jedi, actually. That was one of the first things I remember actually Ronaldo talking about with us all those years ago. Well, it's probably like maybe 3, but still. It was around the time that we first jumped on these live streams. And that was one of the first things, was that we talked about how The Last Jedi did have its problems and it had some issues and all that. But overall, we liked the movie, and we think that it actually went in a direction that was somewhat brave. And again, I mean, not to redo that show, but pretty much Ryan Johnson took some chances. Now, whether or not he was successful or not, well, that's up for people to decide. Everybody's going to have their opinion on that. Some of it's going to be objective, some of it not so much. But the bottom line is, at least he took a risk with it. Now, it probably wasn't a good idea to take a risk with the second film of the sequel trilogy. That I would definitely say okay. But again, I mean, I agree with a lot of fans who say that the TV series are actually starting to right the wrongs of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's pretty much what Ronaldo's getting at too. I think the TV series is the best Star Wars content we have seen since Episode 6. And he says, in the sense that it hasn't created any controversy at all. And yeah, I mean, any controversy that it has caused has been very minimal. And it's more what you would expect in a healthy fandom.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I think that overall, if we had to give our overall thoughts on this whole thing, I would say that I was a little disappointed with what we got, but I will say that I was satisfied in the sense that what we did get, and we're talking here about the Obi-Wan Kenobi Sizzle Reel, which I think, being that they haven't changed the title of the show, it's still going to be called Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, that's good news, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like everything's going smoothly with it so far. But I will say, I think it's done its job. It's gotten me hyped for the show. There's a lot of things that I saw. Granted, it was concept art. Like you, I would have rather have seen footage. But I think that this is a good thing. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, and I would have liked to have known a little bit more about what's coming up. I would have liked some updates on what we can expect maybe for 2022 and 23.
Yeah, for me, if I had to give like Disney Plus Day like a letter grade, I would give it like a C plus. I would give like the Sizzle Reel like a B minus. It gave me some cool stuff. It did, it didn't torch it for me, but it just didn't give me enough. But it was still a solid, decent piece of work. But the Disney Plus Day, I mean, was average to me. It was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like honestly, I probably could have done without it in a way. Like it's not like I would have like
You know what it's
missed,
like?
like if I missed it, I wouldn't have cared. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like, when sometimes like you're really starving, so you'll grab like kind of a little snack, but
Mm-hmm.
then you realize the snack really didn't do anything. In fact, it probably made you hungrier, and you almost would have been better off if you hadn't eaten anything. Same thing with sleep. Sometimes you'll take those naps, you wake up, you're even more tired, and you're like, man, I should have just not even
Kept
done
going.
anything. Yeah, and that's basically what this is like.
Yeah.
It gave you some stuff that's cool, but it's sort of like, kind of like you said, I think that on one hand, yeah, I know what to expect, and that's kind of cool. It's given me a little bit of direction. I think that would have been more impactful if you had debuted that in a full-blown trailer. It's like, it almost diminishes now a trailer that might come up. Not much, but enough. Now, Dwight asks, when was the last time you guys saw the original trilogy with the lore it created in mind?
Well, I watched the original trilogy quite often, actually.
Mm-hmm.
When you say with the lore it created in mind, like what do you mean?
I think I could be wrong, and Dwight, of course, you can chat in and correct us if we're wrong, but I think what he's getting at is, when was the last time that we watched the original trilogy? Now that we have all this lore that's filled in some of the gaps,
Like
You know,
Rogue One,
that's-
Solo.
yeah, like your Rogue One, your Solos, your I mean, you got the Bad
Mandalorian, Bad
Batch
Batch.
now. Exactly, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I'm going to give the same answer that you started giving, basically, and that's I watched the original trilogy quite a bit, actually. So, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think about, it does give things a lot of context. I like the way that, like now when you watch certain scenes, they kind of have it has some more of an impact, you know, to it. So yeah, I mean, but I think there's, um, especially like, even Mandalorian, I think that was really cool. Mandalorian kind of probably had the biggest just because it's the continuation of, like I said,
Hmm.
it's 6 years after Return of the Jedi, especially that last season finale with Luke at the end, like that gave me such satisfaction. And that gave me like almost like a sense of closure in a way. Like even if I don't see get another bit of Luke doing anything else, it's still like, okay, I get to see Luke at a master level besides
Grandmaster.
Grandmaster level, yeah. Before because like you get it a little bit in Return of the Jedi. He's like, okay, he's more like a Jedi Knight at that point, like a full knight. But you really don't see him as a master. But then by the time we see him here, he's Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. And it's you see it, and I think that gave me such gratification because of watching how he started. Like when you go back and look at A New Hope, and he's just whining, "Oh, what's that flashing? And how am I supposed to see if I got the visor on my face?" Like he's doing all this whining, and then now he's marching through this thing almost like his dad, and he's destroying robots. I mean, these droids, and without even blinking. He's not even worried about any of this crap. I mean, it's just like
Yeah, you get to
it's
basically see
amazing.
the Luke that, one, you've always wanted to see.
Yeah.
Two, at that point, because this is 6 years again after Return of the Jedi, so now he's fully come into his own. He's basically, if he isn't Grandmaster level, he's very nearly there at that point. And,
Yeah.
he's doing what you really wanted to see him do in the sequel trilogy. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it. And it's a little bit more like
Exactly.
the expanded universe was. Okay, so Dwight also says, whatever we get from the Kenobi series, when we see the original 3 movies, your mind is going to fill in the blanks. As you watch the movies, you will fully understand what everyone was talking about. And yeah, I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
just going to get more of that. I mean, we get that from Rogue One. We get that to a degree from Solo. We get that from the Bad Batch. We get that from the prequel trilogy. There's a lot of fill
Rebels.
in the
Oh
blanks.
yeah.
And, that's not even counting the books and the comics. I mean, if you actually read that War of the Bounty Hunter series that I yammer on and on about every week, you'll see that you want to talk about filling in lore of the original trilogy. I mean, the stuff that's going on between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, at first, when you're originally watching this stuff, and even later on, you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. It's only a year or whatever. You read these comics, you're like, dude, this is insane. And I want to see movies of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy what goes on. So, yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Ronaldo says, I'll give this Disney Plus event a 7.5 out of 10. Little more Star Wars would have been good. And then, of course, Dwight was pretty much confirming what we were talking about. He's like, exactly, there was no world then. And then Ronaldo's like, personally, I see the original trilogy without the lore in mind. I just treat it as its own story. That's another thing that I do sometimes. It
Yeah,
really
that's the thing. You
depends.
can do that.
Yeah, you can do that. In fact, if you really want to dial it in, you could treat episode 4 as its own self-contained story and leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did for 3 years because that's all we had. Let's see what else. He says, same thing with the prequels and the sequels. I want to see a trilogy's particular story without thinking about the others. Well, that's a good way of doing it with the sequels, especially. Because, the problem is that anything that comes out is going to naturally be compared to the original trilogy. So that's going to always be an issue. It's never going to live up. But at the same time, I think what they're doing is, rather than competing with the juggernaut that is the original trilogy, what they're doing is they're propping it up. They're kind of filling in gaps, they're building that foundation. And they're making it more enjoyable. It's something that,
especially for me, for Rogue One, it really did it for me. Like, Rogue One was a really well done, and like, I didn't think it was really needed, but I think it gave me so much. It made everything like in A New Hope more
impactful.
Yeah, it gave it more angst to it. And you see, like, okay, when you hear Leia talking about, like, okay, in I forgot the name of the general, but he was basically saying, like, like, we got one shot at this. And that whole scene where it's like, okay, well, the Death Star is now in range. Luke is the last fighter left. It's like, okay.
Oh, episode 4.
You see what
that might have been General Dodano.
Okay. The guy with the white hair and the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my whole thing is just kind of like, when you see what they went through in Rogue One just to get the plans for the Death Star, and it's like, okay, now this thing is hanging in the balance by Luke's single X-Wing fighter. It brings up to that point you always bring up, how they always say, Luke, you switched off your targeting computer. What's wrong? Nothing. Am I right? It's like, no, dude, like, you got to tell us more than that, because you're the only one left, and like, this thing is in range.
Yeah.
And
we're pretty much about to die, and you're switching, you have like a 1 in a million to make this shot anyway, and now you're switching off the targeting computer. I don't think that's a good idea, man.
Yeah, man. So yeah, it does add a lot more to the when you look at those two movies back to back, you really get the sense of like, okay, wow, like, and I think that's what Obi-Wan's going to do for episode 4 as well. Like, I think it's going to add hopefully more context, especially if they deal with Vader and what his thoughts are and all this stuff. So
yeah, I think it's just going to keep building and building and building. And I mean, I think that that's a really cool thing. Another example is you can go A New Hope, which fortunately that was the first one that came out. You can enjoy that. You can enjoy that as an individual film. In fact, that's basically what Dwight was saying. True, episode 4 was self-contained. Elements were explored starting in Empire. So with episode 4, you can definitely treat that as its own thing. Now, you watch Rogue One, hey, you get a little bit more context, and it enriches. I like that word, enrich. It enriches the story. You don't need it, but when you get it, it just makes it gives it more depth, and it gives it more impact. Now, you don't have to stop there. You can go and read the book Catalyst, which is essentially the prequel to Rogue One. Is it 100% necessary to do it to enjoy Rogue One? Absolutely not. But I promise you, if you read that book, you will completely look at Rogue One differently. And not in a bad way. In a really good way. So it really depends on what you want to invest, because you could just enjoy these films for what they are. But it depends on what level of fandom and what enjoyment you're getting out of reading some of this extra stuff. Some people don't need it. Other people need to consume everything. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I try to keep up with as much as I can because I really do love this universe. I mean, that's why we do this show. Because it's such a rich, deep, expansive universe that Lucas initially created, and then, of course, other authors and contributors and storytellers have basically added to that. And it's just a really cool place to hang, And then Dwight, of course, points out, Lucas said the original trilogy was one movie. It took the first act and made it Star Wars. Yeah, that's correct. It was kind of like, he basically was like, okay, if I take this giant story, what part of the story could just be a self-contained film? And that's what it was. And then, of course, Ronaldo's like, I can enjoy Last Jedi, but I don't let what happened in episode 9 ruin episode 8. And some people would actually go vice versa. He says, in my opinion, one movie doesn't ruin the other. It says, I think The Phantom Menace is not a good movie, but I don't let episode 1 ruin what I love about episode 3. And Dwight's like, the word for today is enriches. That and gazillion. I've used that at least 6 times today. But
At least a gazillion times.
yes, I can use enriches a gazillion times too. It's up to you. It enriches the show. But I think that it is true. And look, there's people that love Phantom Menace. Like, that's their favorite one. That's one of the things that, I read all this stuff, and this is another reason why I wanted to do this show, and I'm hoping that the audience grows and more people are chatting in real time, and then there's more comments. We did get a good amount of comments, but I really like to hear all these things. Like, there's people that hate the Phantom Menace. There's people that love it. There's people that just swear by The Last Jedi, and then there's everybody that hates it. And I'm not even talking about the extremes, but just things. It's kind of like what happened when you and I even started talking about Star Wars, which is forgive the pun, the catalyst of this show. It was, you and I would sometimes, we would talk about a scene and we would see different things in it. Like, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. And that's what really led to these really cool Star Wars discussions. Sometimes we see the same thing and we just want to discuss it. And then other times it's like, hey, did you ever notice this? I remember a couple of times you would come into work or whatever, you'd just be like, yeah, man, I was thinking about that whole carbonite thing. And, then this jumped out at me and with this, and it would start this whole discussion, which I thought was really cool. And then eventually it's like, hey.
We did have the most random conversations.
Yeah, random conversations. And the thing that's funny about it is I know there's people out in this world that think the same way. Like us, like Ronaldo, like Dwight, like some of the other people that chat in once in a while. And it's really cool to get more and more perspectives because it fascinates me. Rather than being one of these toxic fans that if you don't think the way I think about something, then I pretty much want to end your time on this earth. It's really more about, wow, okay, well, why do you... like, for instance, okay, why is The Phantom Menace your favorite film? And then when you hear their perspective on it, it might turn into something like, wow, I never really looked at it like that. And maybe it doesn't become your favorite film, but maybe you get a deeper appreciation. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Either you understand another fan's perspective, or you just get a deeper appreciation for the thing. And now your own enjoyment of it has been affected. And so I think that's it. Ronaldo says, I know someone that actually thinks the holiday special is funny. I almost force choked that guy.
And you should have.
Yeah, well, I think Ronaldo chatted on that day. It's almost the 1 year anniversary. The last Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, on that Wednesday, we actually watched and reacted to the holiday special. And we had our special guest, Dave Cossey, on that show, which I had to say, I almost want to go back and watch that because some of the comments were hilarious. And it wasn't until we actually just watched it in real time like that together that I'm like, wow.
It really sucks.
I mean, Harrison Ford, I think that's really what soured him on Star Wars, to be honest.
It's probably what did it. Sent him over the edge.
Kind of a nervous breakdown kind of thing. But what we have to do, and you guys can get involved in this too, whether it's Ronaldo, Dwight, you still got a little bit of time to chat, but if you're watching the rebroadcast, you can comment. And while you're hitting that like and subscribe button and notification bell, you can actually comment on what should we do this Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is coming up. I actually think it's a week from this Wednesday. We got to react to something. I mean, that was a cool thing. Maybe invite some on-air guests that we know that could liven things up a little, kind of like Kasi. Maybe Kasi be willing to come back on. But yeah, man, I think that we got to watch something. We got to react to something. So put some thought into it in let us know what you think about that. Dwight says, to this day, episode 9 is the only one that I can't finish at once. I always fall asleep no matter what time of day I begin to watch. I have a friend that The Matrix does that. Sam, we went to the theater, and the first one, everybody loves the first one. We go to see the second one, and he was out like 10 minutes in, and I mean heavy sleep. Third one, same thing. It was like, my dad was kind of like that with Harry Potter. Like, every Harry Potter movie just made him fall asleep within 20 minutes. So maybe, Dwight, episode 9 is that way for you. I don't really see how, because it's moving so fast.
Well, if he ever gets insomnia, he knows what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Ronaldo's like, well, the same thing happens to me with episode 1. And then Dwight's like, I do a lot of skipping in Phantom. Just give the Jedi Sith stuff. That's really the problem, because ultimately, and I don't know about you, but I feel that way. But not because I don't like the story. And this is something you and I go back and forth on constantly. The story was actually really good. It was the execution that was bad.
Right. And
because of the execution, it's almost like, yeah, let's just get to the Jedi and Sith stuff. Ronaldo, of course, was talking about how funny that watch-along last year was. So, yeah, I mean, suggest something else that we can watch, Star Wars related, that, I won't get a million copyright strikes. Because we got lucky. I mean, when we watched the Boba Fett trailer, that skated through fine. I'm curious on what this one's going to do. But, I don't think even YouTube, it's like, the holiday special, you know what, just let it go.
They don't even care about that. Hey,
yeah, they don't even care. It's like, oh. Actually, I'm surprised they haven't taken it down. But yeah, it would be really cool to see maybe what we can come up with as far as something like that. So, Monday, I'm not sure. Of course, we plan to review Visions episode 6. I'm hoping that I can do Monday. We have this, I had this 2-day job where I got to do like the whole setup and all that stuff. I should be out in time. We should be good for Monday. And then, of course, a week from Friday. Oh, Ronaldo suggested the Family Guy parodies. Yeah, that might be fun. Like Blue Harvest. Because we love those. Yeah, maybe we can. Maybe we could try to do that. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if it actually gets flagged or not, though. I mean, let's put it this way: we'll stream it. We'll see what happens. That actually wouldn't be a bad one. That would be cool. We'll see if we can get away with it. But hopefully, I think we're gonna do our Monday show at 8 o'clock. We're gonna review Visions episode 6. You should be happy. We only have 4 more episodes, I think, to get through. Although we both like the last one.
Yes.
But Ronaldo seems to think we're not going to like this one. But then there's episode 7. So, we'll have to see. He says, have you seen episode 6 of Visions without turning to the dark side? We have not watched it yet. Usually, when do you usually watch them?
Usually I try to sometimes the day before or sometimes after the day of the show.
Yep.
Just so it's fresh in my mind.
Yep. Usually that's what I do. I try to watch it like Sunday afternoon or evening or something like that because I want it fresh. And then if I have time, I'll even try to rewatch it that day. Right before the show. Like 5, I think I watched again right before we went live. So yeah. So no, we haven't seen it yet, but we're going to. And of course, there's a lot that we can talk about next Friday. There's been a lot of news that's been popping up. There's been a lot of really cool discussion-based things that we can get into. The question is just going to be picking which one we want to talk about. So if there's anything that's been out there that you guys want to talk about, put it in the comments section, and maybe we'll see what we can do about that. So hopefully we see you guys again Monday. So with that, I think we're going to say goodnight. So I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.